Welcome to English classes with Dr. Rajiv. So previously we have completed tense. Now the next topic I will pick up, and that one is voice. Voice is also actually a verb form, and that form says whether the subject is the doer of the action or subject is the receiver of the action. So in one sentence you have subject, then you have verb, and then you have object. So whether the subject is the doer of the action, the subject acts, does something, or subject receives or suffers action. That is what actually denoted by this voice form. So here I have discussed two cases. One is the subject is the doer of the action, and in another case, subject is the receiver of the action. So this way, we can have two different types of voices. So one is active voice, the other is the passive voice. So when subject is the doer of the action, that will be in active voice, and when the subject is the receiver of the action, that one will be in the passive voice. Now here you can see with more examples. Now in active voice, subject does something, or he is the doer of the action, or the subject acts. Let us take one example. Krishna helps Shiva. Now Krishna, who helps whom? So Krishna helps Shiva. So he is the doer of the action. Krishna is the doer of the action, and Shiva is the receiver of the action. So when you have, this is subject, this is verb, and this is object. So when you want to make this subject as the doer of the action, use it in active voice. So this verb form helps is in active voice. And this active voice suggests that this subject Krishna is the doer of the action and this Shiva is the receiver of the action. Now if you wanted to make Krishna as the receiver of the action, so in that case it would have been changed. Krishna is helped by Shiva. That would be if you wanted to make that Krishna is the receiver of the action. Now here, since we have to say that Krishna is the doer of the action, that is why we have used this verb form helps. So when you want to make this subject as the doer of the action, all right, so in that case this verb form is appropriate. All right, this is correct. Now we want to make this as the receiver of the action, so this form would not be correct here. So in that case you have to make is held by Shiva. So that was the passive form of the voice. So let us take this one, understand this one. In active voice, subject does something, or he is the doer of the action, or the subject acts. Here the subject is the doer of the action. It does something or it acts. All right. So in this verb form, is an active voice. Now Krishna, doer of the action, helps the verb form, Shiva object. So in this sentence, you can understand like this, that since subject Krishna is the doer of the action, the verb helps is an active voice. So it's simple. Now after this, just opposite of this will be the passive voice. And passive voice, what happens? Passive voice, you can see like this. In passive voice, something is done to the subject, or subject suffers or receives action. For example, Shiva is helped by Krishna. Now Shiva is what? Shiva is actually is the receiver of the action. It suffers action. All right. So since why it is suffers action? Because here Shiva is helped by someone. Shiva is helped by Krishna. All right. Shiva is helped by Krishna. All right. Shiva is not helping Krishna, but it is receiving help. So when it is receiving help, suffers or receives action. In that case, this verb form will be in passive voice. All right. So since this is receiving action, so this verb form will be in passive voice. So here you can see Shiva receives or suffers action is held verb in the passive voice and Krishna is the object. All right. So in this sentence, since subject suffers or receives action, the verb form will be, of course, in passive voice. Now after this, mm, uh, now we have one question would be there, that if you have to draft a sentence. So in that case, when and where you have to use active voice and when and where you have to use passive voice. This is what the question would be there in your mind. Now, when if you want to make the doer of the action prominent, all right, in that case you use active voice. If you want to make the receiver of the action as prominent or more important, so in that case you use passive voice. So in active voice, doer of the action is to be made prominent, and passive voice, receiver of the action is to be made prominent. So uh, one thing is there, and the second thing is there, that active form would not involve the use of indefinite or vague pronoun. All right. So if the subject is indefinite or the subject is vague pronoun, all right. So in that case, don't use it in active voice, use it in passive voice. Now let us take one example. People speak English all over the world. Now here this people is indefinite pronoun. This is vague pronoun. All right, not sure who the person is. All right, anyone can be there. So people speak English all over the world. All right, so all people. So you don't know who. It's the same way as somebody, they, people, not sure. You cannot specify anyone. So in that case, they are indefinite or vague pronoun. So when you have indefinite or vague pronoun as subject, better don't use it in active voice. Use it in passive voice. So you can see here, people speak English all over the world. No, it's not correct. Better use English is spoken all over the world. So this is another use of passive voice. So first, if you want to make subject as a receiver as important, use it in passive voice. And if the subject is a vague pronoun, indefinite pronoun, again you can use it in passive voice. Otherwise, you use it in passive voice. So now there are certain rules when and where we can or how we can make change into passive voice. Rules to change from passive active to passive voice. So here number one, subject changes into object and object changes into subject. All right. So what is denoted by the subject in active voice will be the object in the passive voice. All right. What is denoted by subject in active voice will be the object in the passive voice. Remember this thing. This will be done. Then next one is subject is left out when indefinite or vague pronoun is used as subject. All right. So I can simply drop that subject if that is indefinite or vague pronoun. So another thing, another rule for that one is this. Then verb doesn't change the tense. Remember one thing. Sometimes we change tense also. All right. So we have to be very sure that when we make into passive voice, active voice to passive voice, don't change the tense. So remember this thing. All right. Only verb changes and the verb form changes, not the tense. The next one is only transitive verbs change into passive voice. All right. There are two types of verbs also. One transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. So in transitive verbs, so what happens? Transitive verbs, action passes over to someone. All right, so Ram helps Hari. All right, Ram helps Hari when you say that this action help passes over the action from Ram to Hari. But when you say Ram smiles, now this smile is an intransitive verb because action doesn't pass over to someone else. So you have to remember that only transitive verbs changes into passive voice, not intransitive verbs. The next one is in case two objects are there, you can take either object as subject and make it a sentence. So both object can be taken alternately and then you can make them as subject. Uh, we will discuss all those things in the coming slides. So no passive form for past, present, future, perfect continuous and future continuous tenses. So you have to remember this also, so you don't change them. And as far as changes in preposition is concerned, some prepositions actually inseparable prepositions. All right, some prepositions are inseparable. So if there are inseparable prepositions in active form, so don't try to drop them. All right, use those inseparable prepositions also along with your by also. So you may feel that there are two prepositions used, so don't worry about that one. So inseparable positions, don't drop them. So this is one thing. And by is used to show subject as the doer of the action. To not only by as the doer of the action, sometimes you can use to it, with, at, in, are also used for by. So remember these things. So sometimes you can just do away with all those prepositions also. All right. So remember in prepositions, one preposition is that by. So as far as changes in preposition is concerned, some prepositions are inseparable. All right, so even if you change from active voice to passive voice, you have to keep those prepositions with itself, even if you use by also. So however, by is used to show the subject is the doer of the action, but not only by, you can use other prepositions also while changing from subject to active voice to passive voice. So these can be, it can be to, it can be with, it can be at, in. They can also be substituted for by. With this one thing also I'll tell you that intransitive verbs do not change into passive voice. We have already told you that intransitive verbs do not change into passive voice. However, that the object is cognate object, all right. So then in that case, you can change it to passive voice. So from made, run to race, do deed, speak a speech. So if these are called cognate objects, so if they can be converted, then in that case you can change it into passive voice. Otherwise, it cannot be changed to passive voice. So intransitive verbs cannot be changed into passive voice, uh, except they are cognate objects. So these are cognate objects. So if we run, race, do deed, speak a speech, etc., they're cognate objects, then you can change it. Otherwise, leave it. Now let us see one by one. The first thing I told you, that's while changing from subject to object, what happens? Subject changes to object and object to subject. Now here let us take one example. Ram teaches Hari. Now Ram teaches Hari, Ram is the subject, teaches is the verb, and Hari is the object. So here what happens? This Hari, when this is an active voice, this verb is in active form. So this verb is in passive voice. So while changing from this one, this subject changes into object. This is Ram. And this Hari, object changes into Hari. So subject changes into object and object changes into subject. This is the first criteria, a rule for changing subject from active to passive voice. So subject changes to object and object changes into subject. The second one is that subject is left out when there is indefinite or vague pronoun. Alright. So here you can see people speak English all over the world. Now this people is indefinite or vague pronoun. So in that case, better you use English is spoken all over the world. Alright, this people, you just drop it. You just drop it because this is indefinite or vague pronoun. The next thing I told you that only transitive verbs change into passive voice. Intransitive verbs do not change. Now here we see Ram teaches Hari. So this is a transitive verb because action passes over from Ram to Hari. This is transitive verb. Alright, so you changed it to Hari is taught by Ram. Ram teaches Hari, Hari is taught by Ram. Since this verb is in transitive verbs, that's why you changed it into passive voice. Now just see, Ram smiles. Alright, this action, this smile, this verb is in transitive verb because this smile doesn't pass on to someone else. So here this is intransitive verb, so it is difficult to change. How can you change it from active to passive voice? Ram smiles. So intransitive verbs cannot be changed into passive voice. Just remember this thing. Actually, one thing you should also know that there's nothing like separate category that these verbs will be uh, transitive verbs and these verbs will be intransitive verbs. There's nothing like that. This simply depend upon the users, alright? So whether you can use it as a transitive verb or you can use it as intransitive verb. So if it is used as intransitive verb, then change into passive voice is difficult. The next rule for changing from active to passive voice will be like this. In case two objects are there in a sentence, all right, you can take any object as subject and keep the other object as a retained object. So now let us see this one. The watchman refused him admittance. Okay, here watchman is the subject, this refuse is verb, him is object, and admittance is object. So in this case, you have one subject and two objects, him and admittance. So while changing from active to passive voice, you can make this object as subject, or you can make this object as subject. If you make this object as subject, so in that case, this will be retained as the same way, admittance object. And if you make this admittance as subject, so in that case, you have to retain this object in the same way. So let us see. The watchman refused him admittance. Him. Let us take this is the objective form of this him, he. So him has converted. If you want to make it change it into subject, this will be he. Alright. So he is the subjective form of this pronoun, and him is the objective form of the same pronoun. So this from him it will be converted into he. So he was refused admittance by the watchman. He was refused admittance by the watchman. All right, so him, this object has been changed, taken as subject, and this admittance has been retained as object, and this watchman has been made as subject. Here in this case, him is the indirect object and admittance is the direct object. So you can take this him indirect object as subject and keep this as direct object. Huh? Uh, and this one is subject, this one is subject, this one will be retained object, okay, and this one will be again object. So this way you can make it. And in the first sentence, uh, in this sentence, him has been taken as subject and admittance is retained. Watchman is the another object. The same way here you can also see you have taken this admittance as subject. All right, this object has been taken as subject, and this him. All right, him is the object. So since this is objective case, so this also objective case you have kept it here in the same way. All right, and this watchman has been taken as object once again. So with both him and admittance, one is with him, the other is with admittance. So you can change into passive voice by taking either of the object as subject. So this case, you have taken this object as subject, and the second one, you have taken this object as subject. All right. So this is how you can make it. If there are two objects in the subject, you can change, or you can take either object as subject and keep the other object as retained object and make them into passive voice. The next is some prepositions are not dropped even if by preposition is used. I told you that some prepositions are so sticky that they cannot be dropped. Let us see. We are not listening to you. Now this listening and to, they are inseparable. Okay. So in this case, you are not being listened to by us. Even if you use by, you have not to drop this to. Listen to, listening to. All right, they are inseparable. So these inseparable prepositions cannot be dropped even if you use by preposition. Remember this thing. Uh, the next one is general use change from active to passive. Next preposition is that I told you by is there. Okay, you use it by while converting from active to passive voice, but by is not the only option. It's not the only thing. You can have other prepositions also like to, with, at, in. They're also used, or they can be used for by. In place of by, they can be used. So let us take some examples. The jug contains milk. All right, the jug contains milk is contained by the jug is not correct. So milk is contained in the jug is more appropriate. So here for by we have used in. His words have displeased me. I have been displeased at his words, not by his words. Grass grows over the fields. Fields are overgrown with grass, not by grass. This news alarmed us all. We were alarmed at this news, not by this news. His behavior surprised me. I was surprised at his behavior, not by his behavior. I was pleased my master. I pleased my master by my behavior. My master was pleased with me at my behavior. Alright, so we have not used this by. We have used these prepositions to change into a passive voice. But sometimes it is also like that you simply drop all the prepositions. No prepositions are required at all. So in that case, what are these? Just see. Change without these prepositions also. How it is done, just see. People tell lies everywhere. Lies are told everywhere. No prepositions. Someone has picked my pocket today. My pocket has been picked today. One should always respect one's elders. Elders should always be respected. No preposition. Robbers robbed him of his money at gunpoint. He was robbed of his money at gunpoint. I made him do it. He was made to do it. People hope that the doctor will cure him. It is hoped that he will be cured. Since people is a vague pronoun, just drop it. You have not used this as object. The court found him guilty. He was found guilty. All right, because court found him guilty. He was found guilty is more appropriate because you know that only court can say whether you are guilty or not. So this is not required at all. They say truth is evergreen. He said, it is said that truth is evergreen. It is time to take tea. It is time for tea to be taken. Sugar tastes sweet. Sugar is sweet when tasted. So in these cases, you see that prepositions are dropped, not used at all. So you have many varieties. In one case, you use by. In another case, you use to, with, at, in, etc. And in the last case, you can see that you should simply drop all those depending upon the requirement. Now, after completing this thing, I'll ask you to do some exercises and find out whether you have understood it or not. So these exercises uh, I give you change into passive voice, and when you complete this one at the end of this session, you will find the answers also. You can check the answers also. Now here, these sentences are in simple present tense. I read a poem. He scolds me. She plucks flowers. Does he carry a bag? What do you do? Ram plays on a flute. Do not like her. Do you read this book? Who teaches you mathematics? Why do you dislike this poor boy? Whom do you want here? So uh, these are in simple present tense. You have to change them into passive voice. So by giving this thing one, you will be sure that how to write these sentences in different sentence forms also. So you can see these assertive sentences. I read a poem. He scolds me. She plucks flowers. Assertive sentences. Then you have interrogative questions also. Does he carry a bag? What do you do? Now again you have assertive sentences. Ram plays on a flute. You do not like her. Negative sentence. Do you read this? Again interrogative questions. Who teaches you mathematics? Interrogative. So how you can change into how interrogative sentences are made in simple present tense. These are also examples. So you can go through these also and try to write sentences the same in the same form. Uh, After this, you can see these. So these are, you have to change them into passive voice, and all these sentences are in present continuous tense. I'm writing a novel. Are you drawing a picture? Why are you making a noise? What are you doing? We are not listening to you. So these sentences are in present continuous tense. You have to change these present continuous tenses into passive voice. Uh, Now these sentences are in present perfect tense. The farmer has tilled the field. Have you read this story? Who has won the gold medal? What have you done? Has he not cleaned the board? So you have all types of different sentences. So some typical question sentences are also there. So they are interrogative sentences. So you can understand how interrogative sentences are made in present perfect tense. Now, this one is in simple past tense. She wrote a letter. He gave me a pen. Did you waste money? Who taught you all of you Hindi? Why did they beat you after all? How did you pluck flowers? Okay, so these are in simple past tense. Now here you can see present past continuous tense. All right, he was loving. Were they playing chess? Who was laughing at you? Was he not reading a book? Whom were you calling out? Which picture was he watching? Maisie was riding her bike. So depending upon, you have to change them into passive voice. Uh, Now these are in past perfect tense. I had sold my cow. They had wasted all their money. He had not fed the poor. Had you kept your promise? Who had sung a sweet song? What they had done to help you? So these are in past perfect tense. Now this one will be in simple future. He will do it. I shall purchase a new camera. You will not recite this poem. Will she draw a fine picture? Who will pay your fine? When will he lend us money? Will she not wear a sari? So these are in uh, simple future tense. Change them into passive voice. Now here also these are uh, future perfect tense. Change them into passive voice. Future perfect. So she will have opened a school. I shall have painted a picture. Uh, they will have bought a radio. Who will have done this job? Why will he have missed the train? So These are in future perfect tense. So, now after future perfect tense, some imperatives are also there. Just see, change them into passive voice. Do it at once. Post this letter. Sit down. Do not waste time. Never tell a lie. Please lend me your book. So these are imperative sentence. Change them into passive voice. Now some more examples you can see. Change them into passive voice. You may take this book. She might marry you next week. May God bless you with a son. Can you lift this load? You must help her. He could write a book. We should obey our parents. He should have done this work. They could have informed me. The peon would have rung the bell. Uh, now you have to check the answers. These are the answers. So these are the answers for all the exercises I have given you. Uh, now these are the answers. These are the answers for present perfect tense. This is past tense, simple past. This is for past continuous. This is past perfect. This is simple future. This is future perfect. And these are some interrogative sentences. And these are the hints or the answers. So you can check your answers also. Uh, so thank you. Thank you for watching English classes with Dr. Rajiv. And if you like it, please comment, like, share, subscribe. Uh, thank you once again. And wait for our next video. I'll be posting it uh, just in a few days. Thank you once again.